Welcome to The Final Edit, a podcast brought to you by Maison, a private network for 7 to 9 figure female founders where women redefine success, legacy, and influence.
We're your hosts, Maritza Toban and Hannah Nieves. We're co-founders, mothers, and builders behind a billion-dollar vision.
These conversations are with leading founders who are shaping the industry and the future as they build it.
Welcome to The Final Edit.
Welcome to another episode of The Final Edit. We are so excited to be back with the podcast. And this is actually our first virtual studio recording. So you will have to let us know in the comments what you think about this format. But we figured we'd remove the friction of getting to more episodes for you to tune into. And so we're trying it. So let's jump in. Today we have our lovely Danielle Montague with us. Danielle is actually one of the founding members for Maison. Like, she has seen Maison blossom into what it has become today. And I am so excited to have her on the other side now for the podcast. And Danielle works at the intersection of corporate strategy and human preparedness. And I am so thrilled for you all to understand what that actually means. Her story is so beautiful, and she is such a resilient and powerful woman. And I just cannot wait for you all to meet her today. So Danielle, welcome to the show. We're so happy that you're here. Before we jump in, I would love for you to set the stage for us. For someone meeting you for the very first time, what should they know about the version of Danielle that is sitting here today and how she got here?
Well, I think I would describe how I got here as a roller coaster. It started out, I was in corporate and I got asked to help a client on the side. I created a forecasting tool for them. And then after I built it for him, he referred me to a few other people. And then down the road, I was like, why am I not just doing this for myself? So I started setting up my corporate consulting portion of the retail OI. And then I was in an accident over the summer where I was hit by a car and broke my leg, broke my arm. I am very grateful for the injuries I had in comparison to what they could have been. Was not grateful for getting hit by a car, but the outcome of it was not as terrible as it could have been. And then after recovering of that, it kind of changed my perception of how I wanted to run the retail OI and who I wanted to support. So while I still do corporate inventory forecasting, I also want to support businesses that are starting to scale and they need the help and need to think through the inventory forecasting before it becomes an emergency. Like, how do we improve your cash flow before your 70% of your cash flow is stuck in inventory and you can't get rid of it? So that is my new mission.
I love that. And we remember, when the accident first happened, I think that initial shock, even for yourself, you weren't quite prepared for all the things that were going to come up from that accident. And you were about to get on an airplane and
I remember
meet us
this.
at a retreat.
I was. And I think I even sent you guys a voice memo that I was like, I'm going to be there. And I'm literally in the hospital.
You were
Obviously, I
like, I
wasn't
think
coming.
I'm fine. I think I'm okay. I'm still planning to come. And I'm like, I'm not so sure about this, but
I was not fine.
I think it definitely brought to light a lot of things. And now you're on the other side of that and get to, share your beautiful story.
I honestly, I feel like I can go back in time to that conversation, Danielle, which is wild because at this point it's been like, what, a year and a half, 2 years?
A year and a half. Yeah.
And I'm sure that's also shaped a lot of like what you want to be doing now. So I'd love to just, before we kind of like set the stage here, like now, where you're at now, like where are you spending your time as far as like, what are you building now? What's the focus now?
I think, how I'm building it now is very different because originally I had strictly, like I said, just planned on doing corporate contracts. They pay better, they're less involved, but they all require you. That's the problem. So I think now with what I'm building is much more about scaling a business that I can help guide and steward and be like the thought leader of, but all of the tools not require me. And then also I think as I build a team, one thing I'm really thinking about is contingency plans. I mean, it has made me totally rethink how one, my whole life is set up, even from like wills, how the business is set up,
Mhm.
how would my family even access those things? I think how I set up the business, the people I hire, like, are they the right fit from just like a personality standpoint? They have the drive, they have the motivation, but also they have the heart. And I think from a philanthropic standpoint, that's also changed my opinion. I've always been philanthropic, but like I really want to give back to people who are trying to figure this out and set themselves up to where they aren't completely overtaken by a business and they're set up to where like if something were to happen, there are contingency plans. So I have a lot of ideas percolating, but I really just want to, be a good resource. Step one for brands that are scaling, like how do they set themselves up successfully and how do they own their inventory appropriately?
Oh my gosh, yes. And I think too, with something so massive like that happening, it brings to light, so many things that we often don't think about that we need in order to support our families, our friends, all the things that you mentioned. And I would love to know for you specifically, because you've spent your career building systems for massive businesses. You've built systems for billion-dollar companies before you built them for your own life. But why do you think that high performers miss that specifically?
I think as a high performer, it's really easy to get stuck in the processes for running a business and being so committed to improving efficiencies to drive more income or more exposure or whatever it is you're after. I think the problem with when it comes to building systems for your life, you miss the mark because it's one, uncomfortable to think about. Two, it's honestly pretty time consuming. And when you're optimizing for income and visibility and those things, that can kind of get pushed out because like you typically do have to like work with a lawyer. You might have to work with a financial planner to build a trust. Like there are so many other things that are around it. And I do think if you don't have a financial planner and you're doing it on your own, like you definitely need to double check and work with there are a lot of free resources out there. But when you are a high performer, I think it's so easy to get caught up in the metrics that deliver the KPIs you're looking for, and you feel like you're delivering something. Whereas when you're planning a system like this, you never are going to see the fruits of that labor, but
Mhm.
the people around you will.
Do
Ooh,
you
that.
feel like that stems from, is it a defense mechanism that we just like, we kind of put up those blinders and are like, well, I don't have to worry about this now, so whatever, or is it more of a blind spot?
I think it's a blind spot until something around you happens that forces you to deal with it. I
Mhm.
Mhm.
think most decisions are made unless you're in one of the industries like estate planning or financial planning and you're constantly talking and thinking about it. You're not going to think about it or talk about it unless something around you triggers the thought to do it. Because it's not like every day you wake up and you think to yourself, what does my will say today? Or, oh, I made like opened this additional bank account. Let me add this to my will. Like it's not a
Mhm.
natural thought process
Right.
unless something around you triggers the thought like, oh, I need to deep dive on this.
Yeah. And you know what? Hannah and I actually, we had our 2026 planning session summer of last year. And while we were during that session, we also combined that with a VIP day for one of our members. And she actually told us, she's like, hey, girls, I just want to make sure that you have, your own contingency plan because we were talking about just, my irrational fear of flying. And in all jokes aside, she was like, have the two of you talked about, like what, takes place. She's like, just how you would do, family planning and have all your documents in a row for your family, you also need to have that as co-founders. And that was like the first time that either
Mhm.
one of us had even considered that we needed to talk through all of these things, right? And so I think it is, more common than we think, but it's such an important conversation that
Mhm.
we all need to be having for sure.
Well, and one thing when you're talking to a lawyer, when you're studying, if you're not talking to a lawyer, And let's say you just Google operating agreement and you put, and you're in a partnership or you're not in a partnership.
Mhm.
You Google operating agreement, and that is the operating agreement you file with the state, and let's say something happens and you're like incapacitated, or the worst case happens and you pass away. Whatever is in that operating agreement is how the state decides what happens to your business. So like if you're in a partnership and you don't put in there that like one person can buy out the other person and take over completely, a lot of generic operating agreements say that the business dissolves.
Mm.
So what if I set up my business and it actually could run without me? And let's say the worst case had happened. I mean, at the time, this obviously was not true at all, but let's say I have it set up to where the business can run by itself. The worst case happens to me. My family gets it, but they actually can't take over the business because my operating agreement just says that it dissolves.
Yeah.
Then also
Yeah.
what happens to your employees? Like there's so many other factors. So like paying attention to what is in your operating agreement. I'm not a lawyer, but talk to somebody who is.
Yeah.
It's so important.
But it's so important.
So important. And before we kind of dive into like the work that you're building now, Danielle, I just would love to know, because I think this is actually helpful. And also it's not common knowledge either. I feel like it's kind of hard unless you're, talking to your team. So I want to backtrack for a second. Who were the key people after this accident? Now you went through this revelation of your business of, okay, like what do I need to get in place? Who were the key people on your team that you really had to assemble to help you? You mentioned like a financial planner, but who else did you have to assemble to really support you in taking a look at how you were structuring your business and life?
So I worked with a financial planner, or my financial planner, a lawyer. So I did have some stuff that I wasn't fully set up. A lawyer. And then I also talked to a fractional CFO just about how I wanted to restructure the business away from just the consulting. So I've been working with somebody on that. And just like personally, just to get through everything, I also have had a lot of therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, one thing that was really interesting after the accident is like, I had to give myself a lot of grace, because like when you're moving really fast and then you're forced to stop and like not do anything for an extended period of time because like your brain's not working and your body's also not working. And then you're like relearning to walk and all that stuff. I think, you have to give yourself so much grace in the sense of like, oh, today I did 250 steps versus 0 steps for last month or whatever it is. And I kind of actually got into a habit of giving myself too much grace. And like, I needed to find an equilibrium. Do I think going back to the way I was from the intensity I was before the accident is right? No. But now that I'm recovered, like, how do I find that happy medium? So I actually have been working with like an accountability coach essentially too, just of like, these are the tasks I need to get done, because I almost needed like a CEO of my life to like push me to get me back on track, because mentally it was like such a huge pendulum swing back and forth.
Ooh, I feel like that can resonate with so many people listening to this episode as well, because we all go through different seasons of life. But I think this episode is going to be really, really important. And to be honest, like I don't see a lot of conversations happening about this. Like we're always so focused about like the growth, the momentum, the exits, but it's like, what happens when, shit hits a fan and, you have to have these hard conversations, and this is just the reality of life. So, yeah, I just appreciate you for just sharing that.
This is reminding me too that we never went back to that action item on our to-do list. We definitely need to sit down and talk about, all of our contingency plan. And I'm always joking with Hannah about this because I feel like, it's easy for me to get into all of her accounts because she has like the most unsafe password. No one try to hack into her account because
She
now
changed
we're
them
going to
all.
change the passwords. But, she has literally like that type of password. Whereas for me, I also need to prepare, like an extensive document so that she would be able to get into my accounts because all of my passwords are created by a robot. So,
Well, and
um,
that's like part of it too. Like also Maritza, I mean this in a loving way. You're setting up random AI accounts on every platform, probably every day. what's on the auto bill that we've got to figure out what the password that you log
Exactly.
into.
Exactly.
I
Okay.
am dead. You know what? I'm used to being attacked about this topic, so it's fine. It's totally fine. But just today I signed Hannah up and literally was like, Hannah, I need your password so that I can sign you up for this AI account. Oh my gosh. But yeah, seriously. We
Oh,
definitely have like a long list of things that we're gonna need to cover. Okay, so let's switch gears, okay, and let's talk about human forecasting. So you talk a lot about human forecasting. What do you feel is the life version of inventory that is sitting too long on the shelf?
okay, so that's an interesting question. Okay, inventory forecasting. I mean, I'm obviously very passionate about it. I'm building a business behind it. In inventory forecasting, let me be back. When you're buying for your brand, let's say you're developing a skincare brand and you have 5 items. And in those 5 items, when they're selling, they're not all going to perform equal. You're going to have the best seller. If you have 5 items, they're going to be able to rank 1 through 5. Now, when the new season comes and you're like, okay, I want to bring in these 3 new items, but you don't have enough capital to cover 8 items. So the original 5 plus the new 3. You look at the bottom. What you should do is look at the bottom 3 of your first 5 and think, are these 3 going to perform better than them? If they are, you should stop buying the 3 that you think it's going to perform better than and buy the new 3. Now, there's a lot of math that goes into that and a lot of like data that we can get to. But you're always going to have the peaks and the valleys. So in your personal life, like from a human forecasting standpoint, like really what I've been doing is like I'm some would say a little bit materialistic on some things. I have like so much stuff in my house. There is so much stuff in my house that like I forgot was here. So even things like cleaning out your house, your space to like be more aligned with who you are. Maria Kondo that. I think there's stuff like that. I think there's things like cleaning up your accounts. Like let's say you signed up for all these accounts and some of them you're paying for, some of them you're not. Like, do you know what's on auto pay? Like even cleaning stuff like that up and then really human forecasting your time. So this is one thing that I spent a lot of time on was like reevaluating like how I wanted to spend my week and how much time I wanted to devote to the business, but how much time I wanted to make available for the people that were important to me. So there's like the physical inventory of your life, and then there's the time. And time is the one thing you obviously cannot get back. So like taking an inventory of how you're spending it and does it align with how you want to be remembered, I think is really important too.
Oh, that is so good. And I love that you bring this different perspective too, Danielle, with what you're doing, especially as it relates to this, because I feel that comes up all the time, even in Maison, right? Like we have some women that are in the CPG and product space, whether they're like more seasoned, they've exited, or they're on their like second venture. And I feel like this conversation comes up a lot as well. So I'm just curious with, kind of like shifting into what you're doing now, right? Because you dance between both worlds, right? This
Hmm.
more corporate executive space, you have the consulting side as well. So you bring a lot of like perspectives. So I'm just curious, like, how does your corporate experience like impact the work that you're doing on the advisory side or on the retail OI side as it relates to product brands?
So I think the one thing that the corporate space really taught me is how to elevate your conversation and like only focus on the key points. So are you spending 80% of your time on the 20% that matters? Or are you just doing everything? So that's where like you can outsource, you have
Mhm.
other alternatives. And I'm a great outsource option. But um, but I think when you're elevating the conversation and you can hit the key points and understand what questions to ask. So one thing that's really important to me in like my advisory role with clients is you're not going to want me forever. Like you want to have a fractional person until it's time to you to hire a full team. But I want to make sure when I'm working with you, you understand what's actually the levers that you're using in your business. you understand the lead times, and you know what questions to ask. So that way, when you're hiring, I mean, I can help you with the process. Or once you have somebody on your team, then you understand what questions you need to be asking of them to make sure it's getting executed correctly, and you know what red flags to look for. So there's part of it, which I mean, is full done for you, but really the key point is like, are you educated enough that as this business expands and you get to 100, 200 million and you have a full team running, as the founder and CEO, like you are equipped with the knowledge to make sure you're having the right conversations around your inventory.
I love that. You are so smart. And I love how blend both worlds too into what you're doing. We have a lot of listeners that are also still in their corporate careers, and maybe they're transitioning out of corporate, or they've been thinking about leveraging their corporate experience and expertise, right, to start their own businesses. So I would love for you to talk specifically to that woman. What advice would you give to someone that's navigating both worlds, and how do you prioritize, and still give yourself space to create the life that you've been dreaming of?
So from the space standpoint, let's talk about that first. I know we briefly talked about it earlier, but time blocking is very important to me. I am like religious about the calendar. And at the beginning of the week, not that things don't happen, but I set up time for like all my workouts, what I need to get accomplished in each of the clients' business and any contracts. And I think like you can do that with your corporate job. Like, I need to be in these meetings and I have these blocked, but do I need to wake up an hour earlier in the morning? Or do I just need to plan at night that I'm spending 2 hours at night on Mondays and Wednesdays working on your side business? One thing I would strongly advise before going all in, I mean, there are people who can do it on a whim, and I love that for them. I am not that person. But like having conversations with people in your network about what they're looking for before you build an offer and start trying to sell it. Because I think there have been times
Reach.
I was very fortunate early on that I was approached and then had all this referral business, and that was great. But I think the messaging part, it really has taken me a lot longer to hone in on, because I wasn't necessarily messaging to sell. And I think when you're early on and you're still in corporate and you're trying to figure out what that space is, like do a lot of market research, because you have the luxury of having a paycheck, and you can spend time finding information out to help you dive in like to the right area when you're ready.
Yeah, that's so good. And what would you say that your corporate skills sharpen in you that entrepreneurship doesn't? And then what would you say that entrepreneurship gives you that corporate never could?
I think entrepreneurship gives you way more flexibility. I think the negative of the so much flexibility is if you are distracted by shiny objects, you could be distracted by shiny objects all day, every day, and not get anything done.
So true.
Corporate, I think on the flip side, is so rigid to where like you're so used to blending into the company's mission and the company's objectives and your specific objectives within that job, that it's like a very narrow focus. So you don't learn a lot of new topics. I mean, there are so many things I've just like randomly learned, like building an LLC, for example, and even the whole operating agreement situation. Obviously, I would have never done any of that research or learned any of that with the accident and all of that stuff if I didn't have an entrepreneurial journey. So I do think I think you learn so much more. Like an entrepreneurship adventure is like MBA on the streets. And I think, but corporate teaches you the polish and like how to present to board meetings, how to build decks that are effective for investors, how to build sales pitch decks. Like I've been on teams and we've built decks for the largest retailers in this country. I've also been on the receiving end of on my buying days, of several pitches and brands. I think specific to inventory and product-based businesses, I think when you're an entrepreneur and you don't know what the buyers are looking for, it's really hard to hone your message. I think this goes back to the messaging piece. And I think one thing that when I was on the buying side and I saw all of these decks, I really learned the importance of like being crisp. What is the narrative that you're trying to get across? And then being prepared with the challenges. So I think one thing whenever I go into any kind of pitch situation, I've already thought through any challenges that I could think of that the other side would present to me and build it ready. I also think from like a negotiation standpoint, I've done so much negotiating that I feel like on the entrepreneur side, I have bolder asks sometimes because you're never going to get what you don't ask for. And I don't think
that was
that
good.
is
That was good. Mic
that's clear.
drop. No,
Mike,
I could not agree more. I think the corporate structure too,
Mhm.
sometimes it's, and it's a flex because it really helps to set you up as an entrepreneur, having a little bit more of discernment and working towards your vision because you're so used to having, clear goals and KPIs when you're in a corporate setting. And I think to bring that into entrepreneurship is so helpful because it's very, like you said, it's so easy to be like, okay, well, now I'm a social media manager in my business, and now I'm accounting, and now I need to do this, and now I need to do that. And like you're working on all these day-to-day tasks that you forget what is that needle mover that you need to be focused on. So I love that you touched on that.
I also think it's made it easier for me to, I don't feel right, wrong, or indifferent. I feel very emotionally attached to my business in the sense that I want it to do well, but I also feel disconnected enough that like if I got to the point that I wanted to sell it, I could sell it and walk away and be like, accept that part of me selling it is that somebody else is going to make the decisions and I have to be fine with whatever they do with the brand. The other point I want to make is that I also think it makes it easier for me to outsource because I don't, well, one, I read the book Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. But two,
that's a good one.
I, like I can evaluate like what is the ROI of my time on this subject or topic and like do I need to learn how to do this once or twice and then outsource it? Or should I just hire somebody from the outside? And I think like as you guys both know with me, my social media journey has been real rough. I hate it, but I'm working on it. And I
You're
think
doing so well.
thank you. I think I decided that, I really wanted to learn at least the basics of what I wanted to do and how I wanted to say my message because I had tried outsourcing that in the past and it wasn't coming across how I wanted it to. Um, so now I'm getting it set up the framework to where when I do outsource it, it will be easier to follow. So another corporate benefit is building SOPs.
I am taking away so many things from this conversation. I mean, from life and trust and your team for afterlife, all these different types of things, to systems, to
Making
inventory.
a list of who needs to be notified.
Exactly. No, this is so good, Danielle. And I think is just the reality check. I think going back to your point of it's easy to get shiny object and just be in like the flashiness of entrepreneurship. It's so easy to forget like we are human and we go through human things. And this is like no one's numb to it, no matter how much money you make. So I just really, really appreciate that. So obviously, this podcast is called The Final Edit. And so a big component of what we do here is really just pulling back the curtain. I think what a lot of what we see online, especially on podcasts and social media, is curation, right? It's curation of this image that we want to see. And we want to pull back the curtain on what are the things that you're currently working through. So I would love to know like what looks put together in this season right now from the outside, but actually took a lot of work for you to get there.
Honestly, I think my entire life, probably.
Relatable.
Danielle,
I
you
think
crack me
like
up.
I kind of touched on this. I mean, after the accident, the mental part of like just getting back into a normal pattern was, I mean, it took me almost a whole year of like, and that year didn't start right when I hit the accident. I mean, we had to do the physical part and then I started the mental part of just like coming back to who I am. Like I felt very disconnected. And I think like, it's brought in the importance of like relationships and stuff like that, but of who is there for you and like how they build you up in a positive way, I think is really important. But I mentally have spent so much time working on myself to give myself like the right level of grace and the right level of strength to move to rebuild how I want to rebuild. So I think I would say literally everything about my life I feel like has is built by a lot of band-aids at the moment. But they're all gonna heal. So
Love that. Awesome. So as far as your next steps, Danielle, with like where you're at now with the business, the accident, like what's coming up for you and how can we support you?
So right now I'm really focused on two things for my inventory forecasting business, the Retail OI. First, I'm building something called the Vault, which pulling back another curtain, well, web development, not my strength. I'm trying to figure it out. Um, but the Vault is actually going to be a bunch of free resources because I think one thing that we kind of talked about earlier, like I want to give people the foundation and like, look, you can get the foundation for free. Now, if you want to work with me or my team, that costs a little bit more, but I want to provide any brand that's starting up with access to tools of like how to prep for market, how to build a promotional calendar, how to like build their production calendar, what their weeks of supply is, like just basic retail math stuff. Like all of those things you are all over the internet and you can Google and find any of this, but I put it in one place. So
Love that.
I have the Vault for free, which I guess you can DM me final edit
I
at the
love
Retail
that.
OI and I'll just get you access.
Ooh.
Yay.
And then secondly, I think redoing how my education piece for brands that I partner with
Mhm.
on how do we get them up to speed quicker and how do we get their inventory ownership to the right levels quicker. And that's usually in partnership with the founder of what they can either physically afford or a fractional CFO. So rebuilding that, I want to build a quicker sprint so we can go at the speed that you want to go. So it would be like up to 8 weeks if you wanted to do one portion a week, or we can cut it down depending on how quickly you need to get action. So that's kind of my two areas of focus at the moment.
I love that. She is busy. Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay. Sadly, this brings us to the closing of this incredible episode. First of all, I want to thank you, I am sure, on behalf of all of our listeners, just for how transparently you show up. I personally always love talking to you because I leave laughing and also having learned so many new things. And I really appreciate you, just how candid you always are with everything. And so please tell our listeners, how can they find you? How can they connect with you? And we'll go from there.
Well, I'm an Instagram girly these days, so you can find me on Instagram at the Retail OI. Or my website is www.theretailoi.com, and there's a contact me portion down there that you can sign up for.
Beautiful.
Incredible. Well, we will have all of Danielle's details in the show notes, as always. To all of you that tuned in, thank you so much for being here with us today. And we will see you next week for another fresh episode of The Final Edit.
Thank you, ladies.